Hello, welcome to Bennetts BikeSocial with me, Michael Mann. This is episode 20 already of our Better Riding series in association with Honda Motorcycles UK that brings you and me tips and advice on how to ride our motorbikes even better than we do already. And everyone can improve. Otherwise, why do the MotoGP superstars employ rider coaches? It doesn't matter, of course, whether you've been riding for 2 days or 52 years. I promise there'll be something in this series that'll make you a better rider. But don't just take my word for it. Oh no, we have a trustworthy professional in the shape of our motorbike coach, Mark McVeigh. He'll be joining me like he does throughout the rest of the series. An experienced rider coach, an ex-MotoGP engineer, riding academy owner for over 20 years. He invented the Moto DNA rider training technology. He's also taught more than 10,000 riders, how to be smarter and safer, more confident. Here he is now.
G'day, Michael. How are you going there?
Hello, Mark. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much. I love that intro to you. I don't do it every episode, but it always astounds me of what you've achieved. So bravo to you.
Well, it's just I'm older than I look.
Experienced.
Yes.
All right, sir. What are we talking about today?
Yes, Kamm Circle, Kamm Circle. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and as usual, I always like to start with a story. And, the stories normally revolve around the training range or the track or even in the mountains when I'm training. And, one of the most regular questions is from our riders and students is, how do I know how much grip my tire has? And, when we ask that question, there's a lot of shrugs and nods and puzzled faces. And, some riders think grip is kind of almost limitless until they crash. Others assume it disappears, randomly, like kind of black magic. But the truth kind of sits somewhere in between. And a tool that explains it beautifully is the Kamm Circle, Kamm, and it's also known as a GG circle, GG diagram, or friction circle. So understanding this kind of simple concept, it's very powerful and it can transform the way you ride. And it's really just simple physics.
Kamm Circle. I've got to be honest, I've not heard of it before. You've spoken in this series about a GG diagram, so I think I understand it. How does it work?
Yeah, so if we sort of use the analogy, think of your tires like athletes. So they've only got kind of so much energy to give before they collapse with, exhaustion. So that Kamm Circle is essentially, it's a visual model. It represents the maximum amount of grip available from your tires at any given moment. So if you stay inside that circle, you're safe. Step outside and the physics will spit you off. So you can brake hard in a straight line and you're pulling grip from that kind of longitudinal axes, if you like. And then when you lean in corner, using grip from the horizontal or lateral axes. And then when you brake and steer at the same time, you're kind of asking your tires to share their grip. But of course, tires don't have unlimited grip. They can only deliver so much grip. So, a rider that doesn't understand this, they'll often, overload that tire like with a fistful of brake, while the bike's leaned over, and then suddenly the tire says, no thanks.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I know, Mark, you have a school, don't you? Does it fit into your sort of school system?
Yeah, exactly. So the school's got 3 pillars. You've probably seen me talk about it before: the skill, craft, and mind. And this sits in the pillar 1, which is the skill and the machine control. So essentially, the machine control is all about practicing, drills in a controlled environment. And then you stretch yourself by 5%. So that might be, say, you're, with your lean angle, you might lean a bit further, 5%. And then you kind of repeat that stretch until it's intuitive, repeatable, and consistent. And that's kind of like your new skill level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're improving bit by bit until it becomes natural. What are some of the common traps though?
Yeah, so I mean, the understanding grip, like, it's massive for rider safety, and it's one of things that we push a lot. Some riders, they kind of do a lot more roadcraft and trying to understand the grip of the tire. But when you get surprised on the road, you'll drop to the level of your training, So often we see people, grabbing brakes mid-corner. This is a circle drill, trail braking drill, and the rider kind of just runs wide, so he's fine. But sometimes when the rider enters too hot, they panic and they grab the brake while they're leaned over. And of course, the tire's already busy dealing with the cornering forces. So if you're abruptly piling on, more braking, it overloads the tire. Another thing we see is overconfidence, in lean angle. Some riders kind of believe modern tires, you can lean forever kind of thing. And certainly the rubber is incredible, but every tire has its limit. So you got to kind of respect that. And especially, the surface, the temperature, and, having those smooth inputs, if that makes sense. And then the other thing we see is like poor throttle control. So, rolling on too aggressively while leaned over, and, that can cause the tire to kind of spin out. And then the other thing we see a lot is that, not paying attention to the surface, gravel, rain, oil, even paint, that can shrink the Kamm Circle, the grip that's available.
I was susceptible to that, riding an Africa Twin in the sort of the rain. It was on and off rain, and I came around a slightly off camber corner, right-hander. And the car in front of me was turning left. I'd seen him. I've got plenty of time. I thought I got plenty of space as well. He turned off left into a side junction, and I got a little bit impatient and crossed the white line to kind of overtake faster or sooner, I think, and too soon. And I caught. I think it was it must have been the white line or the cat's eye, but yeah, it smacked me off.
Oh no!
But I ignored the surface change, or
yeah. There you go. It happens.
My experience was at the back of my mind. Anyway, Mark, let's talk about how we can sort of blend those inputs then, shall we?
Yes, I love that, blending inputs, and that's kind of where it gets interesting, Michael. Riding isn't about avoiding the edge of the circle. It's kind of about learning how to blend those inputs so you stay inside. So when I ride myself, whether, it's in the mountains or the track or the forest, I kind of see motorcycling as a dance. You're dancing with the laws of physics. You're fusing your throttle, brake, your steering, vision on your body. And I use the circle kind of as a dance floor. And, you can step forward, on your braking, you can step back, accelerating, or to the side, cornering, but you can't lunge in two directions at the same time. So like dancing, you need, not that I can dance, but I imagine you need balance and rhythm and awareness, and that's why the smoothness is kind of the hallmark of good riders. Like you mentioned, the MotoGP guys, it kind of looks effortless, and those riders are not jerky or abrupt. They understand precisely how to share that grip, between the braking, the steering, on the throttle. And I love Freddie Spencer's analogy. He said fast riders have slow hands.
Or in my dance terminology, I have slow feet. I won't ever be able to think about riding again without picturing you doing the cha-cha-cha on your Africa Twin. So, all right, Freddie Spencer, racing legend. How does that cross over to sort of everyday road riding?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll bring that back to Mike Tyson. You might think, what the heck's going on here? Freddie Spencer, Mike Tyson. But, Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. And this is what happens. So, we have all these theories, and this, we think we know, maybe it's a bit of unconscious incompetence or whatever, overconfidence. But, once you have a surprise on the road, you drop to the level of your training. It's as simple as that. So say for emergency, a car pulls out mid-corner, you kind of panic. But if you're trying to manage that sort of Kamm Circle, you know how much you can brake while you're leaned over. If you haven't practiced that before, it's going to be a surprise. And then kind of the other thing is like, survival on the road, wet roads, gravel, slippery roundabouts, that all shrinks the circle. So knowing that, helps, you ride within the grip. And then confidence is a big one. Certainly overconfidence is something we got to watch about, but having a certain level of confidence. So riders who, in inverted commas, understand grip. That is a big thing. They stop kind of fearing the corners and they trust their tires. So, they ride smoother and, become better riders that are less likely to panic. And, this is what we say with a crash stat, in the corners. A lot of it is the riders just didn't, react sometimes at all, and certainly not in the right way. And I know myself, when I started racing, there were plenty of moments, like when the front tire folded and suddenly, the white's all on your knee slider, or the rear stepped out. And really it was kind of, just random and almost like bad luck. But once I kind of wrapped my head around this Kamm Circle, it was almost like sort of unlocking a secret, and almost like a motorcycling hack.
So it becomes a bit more up there than down there. How do we, again, as road riders, make that mental shift? How do we understand?
Yeah, exactly. So, again, I look to my students. I had this guy that came in, and, when we speak to the students, we always ask them, well, what's your story? Tell us a bit about your riding journey. Why did you come? Blah, blah, blah. So he had a crash, and often a rider will come because they've had a close call or a crash, or their mum sent them. That's another good, or their partner sent them. They're all good ones. But he had tipped into a corner, and, he realized he's just going a bit hot, and he grabbed his brake and yep, down he went. And he just had no confidence in his tires, but we worked through everything, and the Kamm Circle was kind of like a light bulb for him. He just went, right, I just get it. And then once we practiced those drills that you and I have done, and eventually landed on, deliberately braking while leaned over, but, smoothly, progressively, staying inside the circle. At the end of the day, the trust was back, and more importantly, he actually understood why he crashed.
Yeah, important. And it's so easy to have that confidence destroyed with one little moment, isn't it? Perhaps you've got some of the drills that you use at your school that you can talk about or explain that we can practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So understanding the theory is step one, and then step two is actually feeling it. And then, just touching base on the, 20 hours to get your license, and, thousands of hours for mastery. So, growth mindset is the key. And, the drills are great. And that the skill progression is kind of like, practicing the correct techniques until intuitive and consistent, and then stretch 5% and repeat. And that's kind of, we spoke before about that flow. And I love this video. This is the Japanese police on their big Hondas. And obviously, they don't ride like this on the road, but they have fantastic machine control skills. And essentially what that does is when they have a surprise on the road, they've got the skills to deal with it. So that's the key thing. But here's a few drills, to bring this Kamm Circle to life. And like I said, this is part of this the skill pillar. So it's practicing those machine control skills in a controlled environment. Okay, so first one is the braking drill, and we've got your good self practicing that one. But essentially, you don't need any hardware to do this one. And what we do is really, it's by practicing braking harder and harder in a straight line. And most of the bikes got ABS now, so you can squeeze more. And what we generally tell the students is squeeze in the middle of the slowing phase until you kind of feel that ABS kicking in. Okay, and then you're kind of at the threshold of the grip. And then we ask them to squeeze. Keep practicing. Now squeeze more in the last few meters. Okay, so they got the middle ABS, and then they're kind of getting it near the end, and then we get them to move to the start, and we get them to be abrupt, almost to the point where you're grabbing the brake, that you trigger the ABS the whole way through the drill. And then after that, then just slightly reduce that abruptness, and that's kind of like the sweet point, if you like. And we've got some data here that we can look at that kind of shows you the braking data. This is emergency stop, so G-force on the vertical, and that's about 1.2 G. That's an instructor. And then we got a student here in the yellow. So you can see that, this is kind of like the rate of application. So, this could trigger an ABS compared to the student. They're not going to trigger an ABS there because they're slow rate of application. So this is a bit more abrupt. So you can be more abrupt, and then you're kind of squeezing in the middle of the stop, and then near the end, you're getting that kind of 1.2 G. And we know that, most bikes can stop at least 1 G. So that helps you understand how much grip your tire provides and kind of what it feels like. And then if you really want to double down, repeat it in the wet, for even better kind of understanding. That's a good one to do. And then the second drill is trail braking. So we've got this kind of circle. You can mark out a circle and just enter it tangentially and really start at a comfy speed. So, initially you finish your braking before you lean, and then step by step, just increase your speed and start braking later and later. And we can see this video here shows us a wee bit more detail. And once it plays through, I'll just go back a little bit and show you. So that's kind of the play through there. So if we go back and we just bring it through, so you can see, I'll bring the arrow in. And you can see here with this accelerometer, and this is really like your Kamm Circle, but it doesn't have the lateral. It's just got the forward and the backward. So basically acceleration and then braking. And you see this is about half a G. So you can see here the rider's accelerating. Okay, there's no lean angle. The rider's accelerating along. Okay, and then they're off the throttle here, and then they're on the brake, and then you see this is important here, and you'll see when they lean in, they're trialing off the brake pressure. So you can see that's really beautiful line because they're, nice and progressively trailing off that brake pressure. So if we bring it forward a bit, you can see they're off the acceleration. So there's no acceleration there. They're basically transferring to the brake. They apply the brake, and the bike's basically still upright. And then as they start leaning in, you can see the lean angle coming in over on this side, and you can see they're starting to let the brake pressure off. It was half a G deceleration, and then now it's kind of 0.3, and then you can see as the lean increases, so they've got their lean angle kind of set now, and then they're on a neutral throttle as they continue around the circle. So that's a really fantastic drill in a controlled environment, just to really kind of feel how you kind of share that grip between the braking, and the cornering. That's how you share it. So that's a good one. And then another good drill is the throttle control drill. So this one here, again, we'll play back this video a little bit, and we'll just kind of pause this. So on the corner exit, if you see here, and I'll bring the arrow in, this is our Kamm Circle, so it's set to about 1.1 G, which, most street bikes, that's kind of like their limit. So this is the braking. When the orange dot is up here, it's braking. Now it's kind of at acceleration, and then cornering to the right and then to the left. So if we feed this through a little bit, you can see where it's accelerating phase, and you can see that the bike's turning. So and then it's stopped turning, it's going straight, and then on the brakes, so it's braking now at 1 G, and then it's starting to turn in, and then you can see now we've got a mixture. This is where we're blending the controls, because we've gone from braking and now we've got some cornering force, so that's why the dot is off to the side now. And then as we continue that, then we'll kind of moving then to, we're still cornering, but now it's moved into the acceleration phase. You can see, so the cornering, the dot's down here, so this is acceleration and this is cornering. So it's kind of like, can be a little bit kind of complicated at the start if you haven't seen it before, but once you start playing about with it, and this is from a GoPro camera, so all the cameras now have got these accelerometers there, so you can get the feeling to the edges of the circle without crossing the circle. That's kind of the key thing here.
It's very fascinating. Fascinating is a word I've used a lot during this series because I'm genuinely fascinated. But I think that the crux there is, if you understand more about the physics literally the two pieces of rubber on that motorbike are the bits that connect you to the ground, and understanding how they react to throttle, brake, suspension, lean angle, and then when you start to blend those things together, you start to kind of understand why, or the forces that you put through them, why the bike reacts in certain ways. But there's a lot of science there. Perhaps you can simplify it for folk like me.
Yeah, well, folk like me too. I mean, it's really trying to, take something that's complicated and explain it into layman's terms. That's the key thing. And the data that we kind of show, it's smooth. The real data is actually quite rough when you look at it. So it's smoothed out to kind of present it. But we've got some good data here. If we look at this, and this is our, these are our Kamm circles. And this one over on the left is typical kind of for a road rider. And then this one would be a racer. So you can see it's set to about 1G just to make things simple. If this racers are more than 1G, slick tires and stuff like that. MotoGPs, I think they're talking sort of 1.6 now with all the aero and stuff on there. But just for simply speaking, so say for example here we're looking at a road rider. You can see here the braking. So this is the braking, and then this is a little bit of trail braking because they start introducing, they've got a right turn here. So you can see the force starts going to the side a little bit, right? And then they're off the brake, okay? So there's no deceleration or acceleration here, but they're still leaning. So that's kind of, when you're kind of that neutral throttle or coasting. And then as they start, coming out of the corner, then, okay, they can pick the throttle up, but they've still got some type of lean, you can see, because they're still, a bit of G-force heading towards that right-hand corner, but they're accelerating, and then the bike's vertical as they go into this acceleration phase. But, it's only about 0.4, 0.5 of a G, so nothing silly, which is what you expect on the road. And then this is kind of, this is smoothed out a lot, like racing data. It doesn't look perfectly round like this, but it just gives you an idea that, the racers, they brake to the maximum, and this is basically when the back wheel starts, coming off the ground and wants to overtake the front wheel. That's when you got to reduce your brake pressure. And then as you lean in, then you're reducing brake pressure as you lean in, and then you're kind of at the apex of the corner, which is your maximum lateral, force. And then you start applying the throttle, pick up the throttle, and then as you accelerate, now you're picking the bike up, and then you're kind of maximum acceleration. So it's kind of good way to visualize, the friction forces, that break them into the, longitudinal for braking and acceleration, and then lateral for cornering. And that's kind of, you can obviously can't, go outside the circle, can't exceed the maximum available friction, if that kind of makes sense.
Perhaps we'll wrap it up then. If you perhaps you could summarize what the German engineer and his circle is all about.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I guess it's like a compass. It helps you understand where the invisible edge of the grip lies, and if you ignore it, you're kind of riding in the dark a little bit. And we see this all the time, thousands of students, how much grip does my tire have? How far can I lean? They're like just all the questions that we get. But, learn it and suddenly, things are clearer, safer, and also a lot more fun. And, when I watch riders get it, the transformation is like profound. Everything skyrockets, confidence and safety. And it's one of the most satisfying things I see as a coach. So, next time you roll into a corner or squeeze your brakes, remember that circle. It's always there. And the trick is just to really dance inside it.
Fascinating stuff, Mark, as always. And again, there's that word. And I think that you mentioned earlier on about the sort of one of the most common questions at your school is all about understanding tires and understanding the grip. And I think it's a very, very interesting point, all about motorcycling. If you can understand that, you're several steps ahead in your journey through that 10,000 hours. All right, sir, we'll leave it there. Thank you. What are we talking about in the next episode?
Yeah, the next one, 21, is about pillions. So that'll be something a bit different.
Fantastic. Yeah, carrying that extra weight on the back, it does affect the bike so much. Brilliant.
It does.
Mark, thanks again. I shall
No
look
worries.
forward to seeing you then.
No worries. Cheers, Michael.
Brilliant. Thank you also to Honda Motorcycles UK for helping with the creation of this series. In the meantime, don't forget to check out our other Better Riding episodes. I've put a link to the playlist in the comment section below. I'll pin it to the top there so it's easy to find. So I've got 3 more things just to let you know while I've got your attention. Firstly, if you've not yet come to join us at Bennetts Bike Club, please do so. It's our own social media site and it's just for us riders. There's over 2,000 of us in there at the moment. It's full of actual experts and it's just a nice, lovely place to be. A similar offering can be found on the more traditional Facebook site. We have a private group there called Bennetts BikeSocial. And finally, if you're not yet a BikeSocial member, we offer a membership scheme with all sorts of different rewards. In fact, there's over 230 different motorcycle apparel, clothing, security, training discounts, competitions live, just exclusively for our members. Search for BikeSocial membership. And I'll say thank you once again, and I'll see you next time. Honda Motorcycles are supporting this series because safety is one of their key business pillars, and their quest for safety inspires their innovations in products, technology, and education, which is why they're committed to achieving 0 traffic fatalities involving Honda mobility products worldwide by 2050.